I am live. Welcome to Tokyo Tonight too. Sorry I'm late tonight. Stuff going on, but still good to be here. I don't have a lot of topics. There is literally no news other than that one thing, which I can give you an update. But I give you an update on that every day. And yeah. So I'm hoping I'll have some time to actually remix a track that I've got set up. I'm also going to talk about the show tonight. I hope everyone is well, and of course staying safe. Um, and apologies as well to those of you who came along to Tokyo to 2.5 Voyages for the first time in ages yesterday. I thought it would be super easy to just capture on my computer a Zoom chat. I ended up doing what Radri did, and I admit I was making fun of him a little bit, but what I did a quick test. I could see the audio from the desktop being captured, and I thought, well, it's capturing the desktop audio, so that must be fine. But no, I didn't realize with OBS you actually need to do something else to capture the sound. So it turned out that no one could hear the chat that was going on, even though we had a chat with up to about 20 something people, I think, at one point. It was fun using Zoom for that purpose. What I should have done is I should have gotten the iPad and captured that, because you know how sometimes when I click on a video here and it will play the and it'll play the audio. So I know that works. I know it captures the audio if I do it remotely. I couldn't think on my feet fast enough last night for that. The Zoom chat was fun. It was a good experiment more than anything else. We did it was Victor's idea, and we threw it together, and it was a good idea. I do love the interface of Zoom. It's what I've wanted from Hangouts and from Skype and everyone forever. The trick for getting it going with this, we will probably try it again. It actually is really, really easy to use, and it looks great. So my apologies to those of you who came to look at that. I saw that some people, particularly salutations to JVlog. I'm sorry. I felt your frustration last night, and I am sorry. I didn't realize till I was live that I didn't have the sound set up properly, and I didn't know how to fix it. Yeah, my apologies for that. That was a mess up on my part. I will learn and make sure it doesn't happen again. But thank you for those of you who joined. It was fun to actually have such a large video chat with Hangouts. Remember, I think the limit was always like 8 people. So, no, I'm not going to use StreamYard. I do quite like the setup with this, and this offers a lot of flexibility, which I quite like. StreamYard is good, but it's not quite all the way there for me. But still, each to their own. StreamYard looks like a great service, and I might be persuaded to come across once in a while. But for now, I'm going to stick with this. You might notice I've got I'm hoping the sound is a bit better than usual. I do have the mic actually a lot closer than usual, and not pressed back up against a wall. I also did figure out when I had the DSLR camera hooked up, part of the reason there was a delay is I have to figure out what the delay is, and I still would like to get the DSLR ones hooked up at some point for the camera. But given that I've got the reduced cropped picture as it is, and this seems to work again, I think this is probably good enough, and hopefully the sound is a little bit better than usual now that I've got this different sort of setup. Yeah, the JVlog, you are correct. I actually did do that with Victor. I set up a quick private test, and I was foolish enough not to check a recording of that session. I just saw everything working apparently in OBS because I could see the sound of Victor talking, and I assumed it was getting picked up. But yes, lesson learned anyway, and I do apologize for that. Again, it was great to see a lot of people who were there. It's also great to see so many people here in the chat. We've got Steve from Berkeley, Sergeant Bilko. Who else we got? Simon Ochanama, Kang and Kodos. Good to see Tawaiwa. You are perfectly on time. It's good to have you here. We've got Simon Ochanama, the JVlog. Who else? We've got Tokyo 503. Good to see you. Hope everyone is well. And I must say, this week it's been actually a big difference in terms of at least there's a lot of positive news. Remembering how this whole thing sort of started, you had it really started in China probably back in November. Definitely happened in December, but the government there sort of didn't move until early January. But they did a remarkably harsh shutdown of Wuhan in particular, but across the country there, and they sort of really got things more or less back under control by early March or mid-March. Then you had Taiwan, which had cases in January and February, and they got to 0 cases in the beginning of March. Again, they didn't do so much of a harsh lockdown so much as just really, really, really proactive testing and management. They did a great job. Of course, South Korea did a similar job. And it's funny because just this evening we've had two really contrasting and important messages. Quinn Rankid, boom, good to have you along here, and David Hunter, good to see you. Two messages tonight. One from Japan, where they've just extended the nationwide state of emergency at least until May 31st now. So May is going to remain in this kind of quasi-lockdown. Japan doesn't think it's constitutionally possible to do a full lockdown, so they're not doing one. But it's kind of it's a requested, and I am acting as if it is a lockdown, as are most people. So Japan is kind of stuck where it is for another month, whereas Korea announced today, and Korea's been doing the same thing. Japan had it start from before South Korea, then suddenly South Korea got it, and their numbers were terrible. They went up a lot worse than Japan, but they've reacted with really aggressive contact tracing, as well as social distancing. Not a full lockdown, but again, a bit like Japan, more or less a de facto lockdown. But, they've now had 0 cases, I think, for the last week, to the point that the government has now announced that from next week they're going to ease the social distancing. Schools can reopen. They're going to go back to, with various restrictions, they're going to be looking to go back to normal. So you now have not only that, but New Zealand and Australia, which took particularly aggressive lockdowns. Much harsher than Japan, for example. Again, they had nasty-looking spikes, but those countries seem to have also had their numbers go down, or new numbers go down quite a lot. And they use, both New Zealand and Australia use like stages and grades, which again, it's funny, whenever I talk with my family in New Zealand, they talk about, this bubble and that bubble and level such and such. I get told that the levels in New Zealand are different to the levels in Australia, and only New Zealand really uses the bubbles sort of concept, although it's been effective, it's worked, and apparently they're lowering the level, they're going back to allowing more behavior. So there's in a lot of countries, really not so much in Europe, definitely not in America yet, but in New Zealand, Australia, Taiwan, South Korea, and in China, you're having a lot of countries now come out of this thing. And it gives some hope. Japan, on the other hand, I wouldn't say that the news is entirely bad in the sense that certainly we're not seeing spikes like in Europe, and the daily numbers in Tokyo, like 2 weeks ago, they were like 200 people, every day. This week we had a lot of days where it was like, down in the double digits. Below 100, it spikes up. I've come to understand a little bit better that with Tokyo in terms of the numbers, although they give a number every day, of course remembering that these are a gated number. These are the numbers that meet the testing thresholds for public institutions, many of which are closed during public holidays, and we're having a bunch of those at the moment with Golden Week. Apparently they do gather in numbers of results of cases from private testing institutions, and they add them all on Fridays. So there's always extra numbers on Fridays, which are like gathered up from all throughout the week. And of course, the day or a day or two after a public holiday, the numbers always drop. So you got to look at the whole week and look at the averages. But truth is, the line is good for Japan, although there are still clearly dozens of new cases every day in Tokyo. The numbers overall are coming down, but they're coming down at a really, really slow rate. And given that it still is clearly spreading uncontrolled, there isn't. On the one hand, it's good that we're certainly not in a terrible situation like in New York or London or in cities in Italy or Spain or France. But at the same time, the way things are going, it looks like this could just go on for months and months and months and months before it becomes anything like having 0 people for days in a row, like countries that have tackled this more aggressively have done, which is causing discussion in Japan as well about starting to be more aggressive. It looks like they've secured more testing, they've secured more sort of medical, promising treatments and whatnot. But as it is, it looks like we're at least spending another month, and it really feels at times like we're going to be in this for at least another 6 months, which is, while the news is not entirely as bad as it could be, it does make you look particularly at South Korea and Taiwan and New Zealand and Australia and think, well, maybe Japan can and should. I mean, it's hard. There's 120 million people. You can't take things that you can't do things in a country of 120 million people that you can do in a country of 5 million people. But yeah, I'm hopeful that there's a way out of this on the way, and certainly a lot of credit to the people in the end of the day in Australia and New Zealand and those other countries that I mentioned, It's taken a lot of sacrifice, and much more sacrifice than we've made on any given day here. But it really shows that that sacrifice is made perhaps worth it. And in Japan, with this kind of quasi half-hearted lockdown, it's having benefits, and it's working much better than things appear to be working in other countries. But that situation is not secure, and it's not, guaranteed to end. So what can we do? So interesting situation anyway, and that's really the summary of all of that. I'll go through the news stories that we have for this week. I see some more people in the comments. We've got Olivia D. Hey, good to have you along here. We've got, who else? Odie Jr. Boom, long time no see, Odie Jr. Excellent to see you. Anyway, my boy, don't worry, I'm keeping my butter levels appropriately high. I've been sleeping. I'm actually keeping okay. Just getting a little bit stir crazy. Andrew Moboy, 18 new cases in Victoria since last night. I can't really tell. Is that good or bad? Is that the same as usual? Or the problem is with Australia and the States, I can't tell. I mean, Tokyo is about the same population as Australia, like if you take Greater Tokyo anyway. So I can't really contextualize 18, but it still sounds positive anyway. Certainly, probably the next. So, 13, I think there's 13 prefectures that are considered to have a real problem in Japan. And I think they probably have similar populations to Victoria and similar numbers. So maybe it's about the same. But yes, indeed. Who else we got in here? Kane Kodos, Andrew Moboye, a message was held for review, something about butter, Bill, BLK, UNK, all you know is you still got work, which is excellent and still very important. And again, why I am glad, again, there's positive results from the Japanese approach, and clearly people are still struggling. There's a lot of businesses that are having trouble making rent, and a lot of people having trouble working. Hey, Kyushu Trail, good to talk to you last night. Excellent to have you here on the show. Remember, as always, everybody, as I go through the subjects, if you've got a question or something that you would like me to discuss, just at Mark Kiko Simon. It will flash orange here in my comments, and I will address them. But yes, indeed, let's missed the last few weeks due to exhaustion. I hope to be more regular. Well, Odie Jr., if you're exhausted, please don't feel any obligation at all. I'd hate for you to overcome your exhaustion just to come here and be exhausted, but it's still excellent to have you here. Good to have you along, and it was actually excellent to have so many people on video last night, and apologies again for those just joining for the technical disaster. As 2.5 Oyaji's disasters go, last night was kind of a milestone that we did a whole show with everyone off audio, and I apologize for that, but we'll fix it. So anyway, in reverse order, going from the start of the week, from last week, a lot of discussion happening about the old hankos, about the old company seals. Again, something close to my heart, something that I deal with in my day-to-day life here. I'm in a situation where, fortunately, we've figured out workarounds that no one has to go into the office to do hankos. But the problem is, I think I've mentioned all the weird, very Japanese paradoxes that we have. The IT Minister of Japan is also the chairman of the Committee of Parliamentarians for the Protection of Japanese hanko culture. So he's actually, on the one hand, you'd think that all these people who have to go into companies, in spite of being allowed to work from home, and they're being told to go into work to get little stamps on their receipts as approvals to file them for expenses and stuff like that. There's so many bureaucratic processes in Japan, both within companies and with, government processes. Ironically, the subsidies to receive small company subsidies for to enable telework and as compensation for being asked to lock down. These applications required people to come into government offices and to physically sign and stamp forms. And so this sort of thing was coming up a lot, and people pointing out how ridiculous it was because the IT minister has kind of got this conflict of interest that they themselves are, head of the Hanko Association, and he came out and said, "Oh yes, this is all very nice. This talk about moving out Hankos. We should spend the next year talking about it, and really the private sector should take the lead on this, not the government. Even though it's the government that drives the need for these Hankos quite a lot." Two things there. One, the head of the Keidanren came out and actually said a really, really strong statement for someone like from his position, where they're normally very diplomatic. He came out and said it's utter nonsense that we're still using hankos, and we should be looking to get rid of them immediately. A couple of days later, followed up by Abe-chan, who came out and said that all of these requirements that he's hearing about, of these sort of comedic, farcical sort of requirements of people to come into government offices in order to stamp government applications for all kinds of things. This needs to be audited and corrected and stamped out. So actually really again, if one positive thing can come out with this, it would be some review of the need for these kind of for the hanko culture. So yes, Mr. Cordy Chip, you thought you was deaf, and then I started talking really loudly. Is this about last night, or is this about last night? Yes, I'm sorry about that again, Mr. Cordy Chip. I've just given multiple apologies. I'll give them again, that last night was a mess up, and we'll fix it next time. Yes, also coming into the comments, Iraq299, good to have you in there. The number of tests varies massively day to day. So as you say, so you got to look at the whole week, and even averaged out over the whole week, the numbers are positive, but still, there's no early or quick end in sight to this, unlike what we're seeing in the countries that have been more aggressive. So some interesting lessons there that we'll come to. So first of all, I feel like it's a little bit early to be getting on the aircraft carrier with a mission accomplished banner for New Zealand, but certainly they've done a remarkable job of a really thorough reaction. Again, a small island country that has a lot of good control over its borders, and frankly, I did like to joke, hey, Shubas, buenos dias, good to have you along from Panama. Indeed, good to have you there in the comments. When I heard that the New Zealand government strategy, I mean, one of the things that the Prime Minister's been complimented on, Jacinda Ardern, the New Zealand Prime Minister, this is all way after I left the country, that she wasn't even in politics when I left the country, so I can't really claim to be very informed or tuned into New Zealand politics. I do pay attention. I read the New Zealand paper most days, the online newspaper. Politically, I'm not really much of a fan of what she was saying when she was getting elected. Like, she wanted to pull New Zealand out of the TPP and become isolationist, and as generally like the left in any election does when they're sort of rallying the votes of the party. She's proven to be a lot more common sense since she came in, and with this whole thing, she's proven to be very effective as a communicator and doing the right common sense things. And I think she's done a great job. And one thing that she got some credit for was, apart from giving these sort of daily updates, she talked about everyone needs to stick to their bubbles, choose the people that they're going to be with and just stick with those people and not mix with other people. And I was like, holy crap, you're just telling New Zealanders to do exactly what we do anyway. I mean, that's exactly the one, culturally that's very easy for New Zealanders, and two, that's exactly why I left and came to Japan. But yeah, I must admit it was a very effective, her comms and the way that she sort of, I think you can say, leveraged New Zealand culture to go and manage it was pretty effective. So and New Zealand's shown a way that a small country anyway is able to actually get through this. So pretty interesting. Simon Achanam, I gotta go, but please indeed stay safe, and good to have you there in the chat. The Javok City Hall stamping all those pages when they can be printed. It is funny how, I mean, I don't know, as someone who works in the legal profession, I don't know what I find more intimidating as photos of at City Hall. Japanese queuing up with hankos to press receipts, or Michigan militia members queuing up with AR-15s. Posing for photos. I mean, seriously, that looks like a freaking, a failed state. When you have photos of people with guns all over the place like that doesn't look like a working constitutional democracy. Just saying. I mean, I know there's more to it than that, and I know that people, taking people's guns away is like taking their dicks away, but seriously, like, that's messed up. And I grew up in an army family with guns in the house and shooting and hunting, and I'm not anti-gun at all, but geez, that was some crazy shit. Those protests, but New Zealand as well. They just recalled all the guns. Canada's doing the same thing. Credit to Canada on that as well. For a lot of people, still a lot of questions happening around the drama about the COVID-19 government payout that's happening. Ra's al Ghul, excellent to see you let the games begin. Indeed, Better Call Saul was awesome. I must admit, I liked the second to last episode better than the final episode of season 5. But man, that whole thing. What I love most about that is while the character of Saul and his progression is amazing, what I really love about Better Call Saul is the fact that at the end of season 5, the 3 most captivating characters, you know that we're getting really close to Breaking Bad right now, and yet you've got Lalo, you've got Nacho, and you've got Kim, and their characters and the people who are playing them, the actors are so amazing, the characters are so deep, the writing is so excellent. The 3 characters I am most invested in, and I love the characters that are already there, but those 3, they're not in Breaking Bad, right? And we're getting really close to Breaking Bad, so that's some crazy, and it was wonderful because you know how close we are, which meant that there was so much tension, there was so much you're expecting, no spoilers, but you're expecting, oh, this is where we're gonna, lose all 3 of the characters perhaps, and you got twists on it. Oh, it was so good. I mean, Kyushu Trail, I liked Breaking Bad as well. The thing about Breaking Bad for me was it kind of went on too long, and it felt like by season 5 it was getting a little bit tiresome for me as much as I loved it. Better Call Saul is just like this build-up, and there's no filler. It's all building up to joining into Breaking Bad. It's a very different series, but it's got all the characters, from that series, and it's really built out their backstories, and to me it's like amazing. Couldn't rank it. I obviously over summarized. They've done an assault weapon ban and recall, I believe. And when I say all guns, of course, are privately owned assault weapons. They've done an assault weapons ban. But yes, indeed. And I also love the fact, Ra's al Ghul, that again they did the thing that American TV should do more often, which is they've gone out with a planned number of seasons. There's no need for filler. Next season is the final season, and they can't do it any other way because they're so close. So yes, indeed, I do like that. Really highly recommend that and Ozark. Ozark is pretty awesome as well, but Better Call Saul is just mind-blowingly good. It's the best thing I've seen on TV in ages. So yes. Coming back to this, a lot of people asking the question, some people expressing frustration about the whole debacle. There was I think I mentioned earlier this week and last week, there were some news stories that were featuring. Here's the deal with receiving the 10,000. Well, all the information you need is on Tokyo Cheapo, and I've shared the link all over the place, so you can check my Twitter feed for it. But or just look up Tokyo Cheapo government 100,000 yen. You'll see the info on how to get it. There's 2 ways that you can get it. One is that you can apply online, but in order to apply online, you need 2 things. You need a plastic My Number card, which you need to go and apply for at a city council office for if you don't have one already. Because it's got a chip inside, and you need a USB card reader, a specific type of card reader, which you can plug into your computer at home to feed in the card if you want to do the application for the 100,000 yen online. Now, very few people can do this. But here, the other thing the other way of doing it is that you can send and simply fill out a form and send it by post. This is probably how most people are going to do this thing, and that's fine. It's a bit old-fashioned, but this is how I'm going to be doing it because I've got the paper, My Number piece of paper that everyone got sent, but I don't have the plastic one. Not having the plastic one doesn't mean that you can't apply. It just means you can't do the online application, which it looks like almost nobody can do that. However, some news channels, some of the public, the privately owned news channels were featuring that what is really important for this is, of course, one, you need to be a registered resident who's been here for more than 3 months, i.e. you've got to have a gaijin card, basically, that's showing you've been here for more than 3 months. And you've got to have your details have to be up to date, registered with your local government, because it's your local government that's going to contact you with the information, with the application forms for the money. So if you moved house but you didn't go to the local city council to update your date, your place of residence on your gaijin card, the forms are not going to come to you. So again, to be eligible, you've got to make sure that your residency information is up to date. And this is not just for foreigners, this is for Japanese as well. So what's happened, it was kind of maybe an unforeseen outcome of this, is that in order to make sure that they get this form, all these people who need it, they've been piling into government offices to go and update their residence registrations to make sure that the forms get sent to them. And particularly in highly populated areas like Shinjuku, in Setagaya, places like that around Tokyo, there have been queues like going down the road of people piling in and crowding these public offices. And while they're there, a lot of people have also been applying for the plastic card, because why not? If they're in there and you have to go into the city council to ask for one of these anyway. So there's hours long waits and whatnot. This doesn't mean that you need to do this in order to get it. If your info is up to date, you'll get the application in the mail and you can just send it off, and that's what you should do. But and the info on how to do it and all the details are very well summarized on Tokyo Chiba. But again, it was kind of an unexpected outcome. BTC Chiba, better late than never. Always like a good boom. Thank you for joining. Good having you in here. Quint Rankid, question here that some people in Japan have been made homeless. What happens to them? Good question. Well, specifically in Tokyo, there are 3,400 known net cafe refugees. With a lot of these internet cafes, you can actually pretty comfortably sit in a cubicle, which will have internet, which has access to like a drink bar. There are showers. It's the next step in terms of cheapness, from hotel to capsule hotel to these net cafes. You don't really get a bed. You can get a bed, I believe, or a seat which will recline to be almost horizontal. These things are, I believe, you can get them for like as low as 1,000 yen a night. There are a lot of people who are in basically homeless situations who are living in net cafes, but because all these net cafes have been closed due to the shutdowns, those people who are dependent on those as a place to live and can't afford to live in other places, and of course people, no doubt more people who have been in situations where they can't pay rent any longer. Well, those are two separate situations. But in terms of the net cafe refugees, some local governments have been offering evacuation centers like gymnasiums and so on for people who require accommodation due to the shutting down of that. So that was a topic about 3 weeks ago, and there was some mention of some governments that were dealing with that, although not all were dealing with it that way. In terms of people who are struggling with rent, that's more of a topic now that it's been more than a month, and some businesses, for example, are talking about that they're not going to be able to stay in business if they keep having to pay unless they get rent relief, which there's no legislation to address right now. Hey, Mata Gaijinka, good to see you. Love the track, good timing, by the way. It's what's on the screen at the moment. In fact, that is what's on the screen at the moment. So good question, Quint Ragged. In terms of what happens to them, there isn't much of a social safety net in Japan, but it sounds like the initial concerns about what was happening to the existing homeless people seem to have been more or less addressed. But there's certainly a bigger problems to come. Christopher Luke, gay capitalism, indeed. Mr. Cordychep, how can they supply such facilities for 1,000 yen per night? Because they're not, because it's like the Love Hotel model. Those cubicles, they're just small cubicles. They have hundreds and hundreds of them packed into very small spaces. And they are available 24 hours. So, and people pay by the hour to use them. Although if you want to use something for like 6 hours, you can get like 1,000 yen for 6 hours. But yeah, I've been like on days off or where I've been out and I've wanted to just sort of, study or read or, take a break. I've used them myself. And yeah, they're actually super reasonable. You can go on for 400 or 500 yen for a couple of hours, or you can read manga, you can browse the internet. There are rates and incentives so that people stay the night. So they're not something I'd recommend as a way of sleeping. But they're if you're looking for the cheapest way to get a place to sleep that actually has internet and and has like a fizzy drink bar and stuff like that. Yeah, they exist, and there are some really good ones. So it's because they can charge for those cubicles throughout the day. Off a single cubicle through a day, they're probably collecting, I don't know, 3,000 yen, and they've got 100, some of them have hundreds of cubicles, across multiple floors, and they offer all these facilities. So it's a good model, and it allows them to offer these spaces cheaper. Quinn Rankett, can those people register for the government handout? Well, they have to have a juminhyo. They have to have a registration with a government somewhere. Good question about what happens. I mean, I guess they would register as their parents. But again, part of the reason that you have those people who are not, part of the reason they're living in that situation is often because of family problems. I am aware that well, again, this is normally the distribution and administration has happened at a local city government level. There are, of course, a lot of city governments. In fact, most city governments in Japan have whole departments that are dedicated to going around and finding who are the single mothers and who are the homeless people and how can we get them all of the welfare and benefits that they're entitled to. Some more proactive than others, but I'm sure there are people that will go out and try to figure out workarounds for those people. But you're right, I don't know what someone who lives in net cafes does for a Jumikyo. I imagine it varies situation to situation for a resident address, but yeah, it's a good question. This track, Social Dissonance, this is Mata Gaijinka, just joined in the comments, her latest track, and it's pretty good, I must admit. What I love about this track is, well, in a way, what I enjoy about, since you're in the comments, what I enjoy about your tracks, Mata Gaijinka, is you make very, very different music to the sort of music I generally make. Generally, you make very different music. You make very ambient and techno and very rich and detailed sort of music, and I love, because I like stupid banging sort of techno sort of stuff that is far less sophisticated, or but for me it's just kind of fun. And I love when I'm listening to music, I can hear a little bit and I think, oh, that little bit there, that'd be really cool, over a over a beat, and let me go play with that and see what I can make out of it. Now, what I kind of like and dislike at the same time about what you did with this track is you did what I would do to your own track. And so you've got a great beat, and it's got a great rhythm, and you've got a really nice build-up. You've got a lot of elements that I typically add to your tracks when I remix them, already in there, the arpeggiated bass lines and stuff like that. To me, it sounds awesome. I mean, I love it. This is a track where I listen to it, and all the things that my brain ticks in and thinks, oh, I want to do that to this, and I want to do that to this. You are doing all the things that I was thinking of doing to the track, so that was awesome. However, I also, just because when I hear your stuff, I think, wow, I really want to take out those parts and play around with them and remix them. You gave me the idea of, okay, this is great. This is a new challenge. I'm not just going to put a booms over it. I'm going to actually take it out and do something to really shake it up. And I thought, okay, I'd like to make a drum and bass track out of this. Problem is, drum and bass is a different BPM, and sticking to the challenge, I do have the tools on my computer here that I can change tracks. I can edit tracks and change the tempo of tracks pretty easily. I really want to figure out a good workflow to do this entirely on an iPad, and GarageBand does not let you do that particular thing. You can't change the tempo of a sample that you import. You can change the tempo of samples that are preset within GarageBand. So yeah, I've spent a couple of days. It actually has been a bit of a rabbit hole trying to figure out how to do this, but I have figured out how to do that, and I've got the samples ready to go. So I was just thinking, if I have time at the end of the show tonight, I will actually probably try a really basic. All I've got is a drum machine and 2 samples that I picked out of 15 from Mata Gaijinka as a starting point. So I will do that at the end of the show. But it was a lot of fun, and I appreciate actually that one, I think it's a banging track. It's a great, everyone should listen to it, and yeah, it's kind of challenged me to expand the way that my own skills for remixing. So there you go. And the debate, I think I mentioned last week that a lot of governors are now talking seriously. There seems to be some real momentum behind the idea of Japan. New Zealand has a calendar-based school year. We start in January and we finish in December, and I thought that always made sense, and I didn't understand why some countries actually have different school years at all. But and I always thought Japan having a school year from April to March always seemed pretty random, although it does make sense in Japan. It's the fiscal year, it's the hiring year, the sakura, sort of the cherry blossom season marks the start and end of the year is kind of nice. However, I didn't actually know until I was here that apparently in America and Europe, you guys, most of you people in those places, your school years go from like September until August, right? I guess with summer vacations at the end of the year. So I never really appreciated that properly, coming from a place where, again, our summer vacations are between November and February. That's, the calendar works out quite nicely for us to have a summer vacation at the end of a school year in the southern hemisphere. So yeah, there's always been this where Japan has kind of been the outlier. It's not had a compatible school year with the southern hemisphere or the northern hemisphere, and it means that for things like exchanges, or for Japanese who want to try going overseas for a year of school or university or whatever, they've effectively got to take 2 years off because their school year is out. When they finish, the school year's already started months ago. They've already missed half the year if they want to skip over in the same year. So, the September school year is a global standard. It's used apparently in India, America, and Europe. And given again that it looks depressingly like this current situation in Tokyo, while improving, is going to go on for a number of months. Particularly discouraging just when you see how other countries have managed to exit from it more quickly. One thing that's happening is that maybe this is a unique, maybe a one-off chance to be able to switch the school year. The government's kind of said, okay, everyone's agreed that it's a great idea to change the school year and we should fix this problem, but at the same time, companies are also oriented around their hiring cycles, their promotion cycles, their, around the whole idea of this school year, the hiring year and fiscal year being based on the school year. A lot of things in society are tied to this April starting school year, and apparently there was momentum behind this in 2000 to change this that was actually blocked due to a refusal to cooperate from companies, saying that they would just not hire people, they would victimize the students that didn't come out that year. There was no one got behind it, but apparently this time the government's now pushing a bit for business support for it, and it looks like it's going to happen. So it's an interesting, perhaps a benefit, at least a correction, but yes. Matagajinka, I would love to play the original track, but I kind of want to remix it. I kind of want to do my thing. I mean, everybody should go and look up and play the track. I might play a little bit of the track. I don't have it queued up right now, but I might play a little bit of it at the end of the show. In fact, you know what? I could play it on this, so maybe I will come back. I remember when I play things on here, I'm not always aware of how loud they're coming through, but I think I can get it. Maybe that's what I do. Well, anyway, let me keep going through. Here's information from NHK on how to receive the payout. Apparently, an unemployed 22-year-old girl thought she wanted to. She saw kids feeling locked up, being inside, not able to go outside, and she explained to the police after being charged with graffiti that she wanted to simply give some relief to the kids by reminding them about sunshine. So she went and did this little graffiti scroll to say sun, which apparently she meant to say the sun, as in S-U-N. However, it was a 3-letter word and she misspelled it. And this is one case where I'll certainly agree. I mean, I don't know, Matagajinka, you can probably relate to this. So this is, this is where there was actually the grammar police were arresting and putting in jail. Stay in school, kids. You know what? In a way, I mean, we laugh that she misspelled a 3-letter word, but technically, phonetically, she's not wrong. We don't look at the sun. If we were actually, it's actually English that is ridiculous, that we call it sun, but we spell it sun. So, I'm with her on that perhaps she's just being future thinking on this, but yeah, if you're going to get arrested for writing a word to inspire people, you might as well want to check each one of the letters. So, yeah, stay in school and don't go to jail for for that anyway. She got some hassling from the internet. Very exciting that 2024 NASA is preparing to send people to hey, the Atomic Tom, good to see you, and the Life of Brian. Which part of the Life of Brian does that remind you of? I'm sure that there's something. I'm sure it'll come back to me, but I don't get it right now. Yeah, NASA's picked three private companies: SpaceX, Blue Origin, and is it Dynamics or something like that for the lunar landers. Basically for the hopping step for getting to Mars. Actually saw a fascinating YouTube video recently that was pointing out, although if all the planets were aligned in orbits, right, which orbital circle is the closest circle to Earth? It's Venus, and the second one is Mars. The planet in front of us, closer to the sun, is actually on a closer orbit to us, so it comes closer than Mars does. But they're both pretty close, and at the right time, when the planets get really close together, is a good time you can send people. There are these windows where you could get from Earth to Mars within apparently a few weeks perhaps, or is it months anyway, but it's not that far when they get closest together. The problem is, of course, however, that, because they're both going on these orbits, they could be, Mars could be not only far away, like from its orbital plane, but on the opposite side of the sun a lot of the time. And so because of that, it actually means that if you take the average, if you took on the average, if you wanted to fly to Mars at any time, and you took the average distance that Mars was away from Earth, it would actually, or even Venus, for example, it would actually work out that the planet consistently the closest to Earth is actually Mercury, because Mercury is right beside the sun, so it doesn't have that huge distance away when it's on the opposite side of the sun. And apparently this is true even all the way out to Pluto. I know, not a planet anymore, but Mercury is actually the closest planet to every single planet in the solar system, simply because it doesn't travel far away in the opposite direction. So that was kind of cool. This is why we can send probes to Mercury relatively easily. But super. I'm actually super excited that we are. I was a huge space fan when I was like growing up and in school. I was in the astronomy club and everything, and I don't know, with the space shuttle it was kind of cool, but it didn't really. It felt for a long time we weren't going anywhere, and like we were not going to go back to the moon or do anything about Mars. And now it feels really close. I mean, in spite of everything right now, and I love that we have these plans getting ready for that. So that's pretty cool. This is interesting. Tokyo now has had 100 deaths from coronavirus. So again, I mean, terrible, but in broader context, could be a lot worse. This person took a sort of all the data from that, and just some interesting analysis just of the 100 deaths in Tokyo. And you know what? If there was 100 deaths, then it's weird that men could be 73.3% and women could be 26.7%. Because they'd have to be whole numbers if they're percentages. I've just realized that. So maybe this is talking about all deaths. But it says that it's based upon the official Tokyo data. So, okay, I don't know how you get these decimals of percentages. But in any case, the male-female ratio is 3/4 male, 1/4 female. Also, the age breakdown, really interesting that people 70 and above make up 79% of the deaths. But actually, if you take people 50 and above, you add another 19.8% to that. So there's actually 98% of people are over 50 in terms of the deaths. Certainly not just the people catching it, but that is a thing. In terms of people with known background, so what's this about? Residents or unascertained background? Can't really tell what that one's about. The number of days it took to report the death. On average, it took 12 days to report the death. Those death numbers that come up each day, often they take a long time. That's the largest, 30% of the time. 25% of the time, it took 10 days, which is why the numbers are going up a lot more now. But no, just sort of interesting. And the number here, you can see it still is climbing. It's not like accelerating, but it still is climbing, and so it still is definitely not under control. But just some interesting data there. Michael Howard, he's a guy that I know. He wrote a book. I've got it around here somewhere. In fact, if I can reach it quickly, it's here. I've featured this book before. The Salaryman. It's got like cartoons and stories about being I'm a salaryman too, but he actually was a salesman at a Japanese, like hardcore Japanese company, and I can vouch his stories ring true, and they're more hardcore than anything I ever went through, and I went through some hardcore stuff. It's a humorous, well written, got some great sort of comic captions. It's a great book. He got featured on Tokyo Podcast. Another thing, if you're into podcasts, you can check out Tokyo Podcast. He got featured on that, so check out the latest. Anthony Joe, actually, that's right, runs Tokyo Podcast, if I recall correctly, and I hope I didn't say that wrong, actually. I hope I didn't have the wrong person, but yes, in any case, whole podcast interview, and pretty good if you want a preview of the book. It's a good book, it's worth reading, so check that out. Apologies again, the Zoom Nomikai was a washout last night, except for the people who are participating, but in terms of trying to broadcast it, I will learn the lessons from that. This is kind of interesting. When I saw Kono-san, Taro Kono, he was like right now he's the Minister of Defense. Before that he was the Foreign Minister. He is an eccentric person, but I don't dislike him. I think he's an interesting character. Everyone now in Parliament, are wearing their Abeno masks, or they're wearing their sort of ones from home, and a lot of people have taken to wearing cloth masks, as Kono-san here clearly has. And he's like, for a country where like non-white masks are banned, like from a lot of schools and workplaces for weird reasons, this is an idea of sort of how much of a conformist he is. He's got one of Mount Fuji with a rising sun in the background and dramatic. I want to know where I can get one of these, actually. It is kind of funny. There's somebody, the story is pointing out that some, as you'd expect in a country of 120 million people, there are some hysterical people who have said, oh my God, the foreign minister is wearing, or defense minister is wearing a rising sun flag on their mask, which he clearly isn't. And whether that and how much of a problem that would be if he did, but he's not. There's a bunch of angles on that debate. There are some people who just see stuff that isn't there. I mean, if you call the actual rising sun itself, if you call the sun the Hinomaru itself, the Asahi, the rising sun with all the sun rays going out, that in itself is a complex debate. Remember that there is still the rising sun flag is still used by the maritime self-defense forces in Japan. It still is a legitimately used flag required by Japanese law on naval ships when they're traveling around. So that flag was never associated with ideology in the way that I know people compare it to the swastika. The swastika, yes, it did become the official flag of Germany, but it was put in there. Before that it was the Nazi party flag, right? The rising sun flag is an historical flag of Japan, which has just been used consistently, irrespective of different sort of governments. Clearly, it does upset. I mean, it is kind of like quasi crazy watching the degree to which people react to it. Mainly in Korea, you don't see it so much from China. But it is funny as well, even within Japan, there's a strong sort of leftist, anti-nationalist element that saw this, and some of them started freaking out. The person commenting here specifically said that they started wanting to throw up when they saw his flag. I like it. I would buy one myself personally. I think some people are a little bit too sensitive. Reminder of other problems that the world has. I know not right now. I know I get it, but yesterday, hottest day on record. These numbers keep going up. And look, with Tokyo, the temperature's been going up for decades. Like before global warming was established as a thing. With Tokyo, there is certainly the heat island effect. Tokyo's just got so much concrete around it that Tokyo is actually, like since the 60s, the average summer temperature has actually gone up more than 5 degrees. So we're talking a different thing to climate change around Tokyo. But nonetheless, average temperatures all over Japan actually have been going up. Every year we see new records, and just the other day we've just had a bunch of new records. For this time of year, we're not anywhere near summer right now. It used to be that like 40 was like this impossible barrier that now gets hit every now and then in Japan. And 40 degrees in Japan is very different to 40 degrees in Australia, where it's dry. Quint Rankett, sorry, I just noticed you asked the question, why do the percentages have to be whole numbers? Because the blog there was claiming that this data was based on the 100 people that died. So you can't have a decimal. If you're explaining the statistics of 100 people who died as percentages, you can't have decimals. You'd need to have 300 people for there to be a decimal like 10.3, for example. Just a math thing. If this is a summary of 100 people's results, I don't understand how you can end up with decimals. I'm sure there's a perfectly reasonable explanation. But coming back onto this. So it's kind of funny, and it's worth mentioning that, again, you talk about another problem that people don't feel able to, we're like the frogs in the pot. When the temperature rises slowly, people don't feel the sense of urgency to jump out. And that is kind of where we are, and while we are reacting in a very extreme way to the current situation, the notion that the same degree of seriousness long term should be taken with climate change, particularly human aspects of climate change, I agree with, and it still is remarkable to me that we've lost 15 years of momentum, for political will, basically, that is, Mr. Cordy Chap, yes, that's entirely possible. It could be various explanations anyway. One other big story this week, Pachinko parlors. I mentioned this last week, that, Japan's basically been politely asking everyone to shut down. I explained the complex situation that Pachinko has in Japan. It exists in a gray zone. It was basically the police and governments agreed to kind of look the other way. And there's an element of sympathy to the left behind Koreans that played a big part in that industry, certainly in the post-war period, and the beneficial role that industry played for that community. There was really no appreciation of gambling as an illness at that sort of a time. Plus, the organized crime and money laundering associations with that industry, and the way that they took political care to make sure that police and politicians, if you believe the rumors that they were paid off. Also the association with North Korea, which I didn't dig into last week. But remember, about a third of those Korean residents left behind in Japan started basically when affiliating with North Korea later on. And North Korea, again, of all the things that they use for hard currency, the Pachinko industry is part of it. And to keep that safe, the industry is alleged to have connections with politicians and police to make sure that the industry is sort of a no-go area, which is one of the reasons why it's suspected that the government opposed cities including Pachinko on lists of places that were asked to shut down. But it was included, and perhaps it's because they're so used to operating outside of the real official law in Japan that a number of Pachinko, not all by any means, most Pachinko parlors have been socially responsible, and they have followed requests to close down, but a number have not. And here's the thing: you've got people who they serve addicts, gambling addicts, and the addicts themselves. In interviews outside of these Pachinko parlors, people admit that they have to do this, and if there's one that's open, they'll find it and they'll go to it. If it's open, the only way that they can be stopped, that they will stop going to them, is if they're closed. People being that upfront about it. But again, a lot of Pachinko parlors are refusing to close, and they've refused orders. They've even refused when their names were punished. Like, again, these might seem ineffectual to us, although they work to a degree. In Osaka, six places were named, and 3 of them actually voluntarily closed after they were named, but 3 of them said screw you. But now you've got Chiba, Kanagawa, Niigata, other prefectures following suit. Tokyo also is preparing to name a whole bunch of Pachinko parlors because they're not complying with the government requests. I've shared already my view that while I think in a way it's kind of a nice and positive thing that they've been allowed to exist in this sort of grey area for so long, and partly because of the important role it played for that destitute, left behind Korean community after World War II. We're now 4 or 5 generations along from that. The industry is now dominated by people who are Japanese citizens, even if they're often naturalized Koreans. Their ethnicity doesn't matter at this point. It's a normalized industry that's basically gotten a little bit too used and a little bit too comfortable to operating outside the law and not cooperating with law because they've been allowed to be basically effectively legal casinos for so long. And now they are being asked to do something socially responsible. Again, a lot of these places are not doing it. And I think if the industry is not going to clamp down on their rogue members, I think the legality of the whole industry needs to be called into question. Or at the very least, if you permit them to exist, treat them like casinos. Casinos are forced to pay levies and taxes to do something about all the addicts and the social sort of harm that they create. Either they should be allowed to exist with an acknowledgement that they are legal casinos and that the millions of addicts that they foster, they need to take some sort of responsibility for, funding, availability of programs and support for those people or something to sort of offset the harm that they do society, or just do what Korea itself does and just make them illegal. I think that hammer should be held over the industry to put pressure on the rogue operators to get into line, because I think their special status should be revoked. So anyway, that's been interesting, and that drama is sort of continuing. Sergeant Bilko, Golden Week next week. It is Golden Week at the moment, from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It is Golden Week. There was also a holiday last Wednesday. So some people, in normal circumstances, you would have taken off last Thursday and Friday, 2 days, by which you would have gotten 10 days vacation, something like that, 7 days vacation. Yes, since you're at home anyway, most people I know are not taking, they're saving the days off for when will actually be able to take vacations. But yes, we're in the middle of Golden Week right now. And I'm looking forward to sitting at home, continuing to not log in and do work for 3 days, which will be nice, although it is hard working from home. Like, you do feel that temptation to log in and try to catch up on stuff every now and again. Matagajinka, Ottawa is still on the cool side. Winter hasn't quite ended. Well, I must admit, Ottawa, I have an image of being a cold place. How are average temperatures there? Is it still like, is climate change not so much of a factor there? But yeah, it is interesting. And yes, months of -20 and -30 are not something that, I must admit, good for the earth, but not particularly good for people living in them. Kyushu Trail, good to have you in the comments, and have a good rest of the night yourself. We're almost done here. That's as I led off the show, mentioning about state of emergency getting extended. South Korea, in contrast, about to relax social distancing, which is their version of the sort of quasi-lockdown that they've had. I mentioned before about ambulance rejections. This is a problem in Japan anyway, even at best of times. But lately, hospitals are increasingly turning away. Hospitals with critical patients, emergency patients, are getting rejected from dozens of hospitals at times, and this is continuing to be a problem. And that is a state of emergency, and that is it. We're up on the show. One thing I'll do, perhaps while I'm setting up, let me know if you can hear this. I hope this doesn't blast out too much sound. Let me put some volume on there and see if you can hear if I play Matagajinka's track while I maybe sit up and do a little bit of a remix thing. Now let me see. There it goes. You can hear that? I assume you can hear that. I can see it here on the monitor. Someone leave me a comment if you can hear it. This is the track, Social Dissonance. And I might just quickly set up here to do a little bit of remixing myself to end the show, but good to have you all here. I do like this track. Oh, I don't have the vertical camera set up, but I guess you'll be able to see if I do it like this. Right. So that is a good track. However, I'm gonna fade that one out, and now I'm going to show you the remix that I am planning to do. So, or that I'm just starting to remix. So let me have a go at this. Let me turn that off. But it's an excellent track. In fact, maybe just go for another minute because it is a good track. Well, no, actually I do want to wrap up, so I am going to fade that one out. I'm going to turn on this, and so we've got it on 172, so let's make a beat. So here are the samples that I've got. Let's move that one there, move that one there, move that one there, and Okay, let's put a drum on that. Instrument. Let's put this here. Okay. Okay, let's try that again. Okay. Let's go back in here. Okay. Let's add some hi-hat. Oh. Okay, let's add some more. Let's layer out these beads. Okay. According to the cell. Okay. Let's go back into here. Let's edit this. Edit. Let's put this here. Move that over here. Move that over here. Let's make that a 2-beat loop. Settings. Let's shorten that. It's pretty cool. Some cowbell. That's not quite right. Okay, let's move this one away. Let's move this one away. Let's just see a cleaner view. Yeah, that's a mess, that last one actually. Let's try something else in here. Let's try that. It's pretty cool. Okay. I want to delay that just a little bit. It's a little bit too fast. Edit. Edit. Well, that's better. A little bit more. I want to zoom in on this. That's better. Don't forget to like if you liked. And what I'm going to do, those are the basic hooks, and I'm going to build around those. I actually quite like the beats that I just made, actually. So, yes, anyway, that's the drum and bass remix of Matagajin's Cuz track, and I'm going to build something around that, but it should be pretty cool. Remember, like if you liked. It's been excellent having you here this week and every week. Remember to find out what's going on in Japan. Come back next week. Check out Matagajin's awesome stuff. Apologies again for the mess up last night, but always a lot of fun. And those are the two hooks, by the way, Matagajinka, that I like the most. So I'm going to play with that. I'm actually quite like those beats that I just made, so I'm going to build that out. Yeah, that's it. Have a good week, everybody. Stay safe, and see you back for Tokyo Tonight 2 next week. Boom. Peace. Hope the sound was better. I quite like having this here. So anyway, ending the stream. See you later. Have a good one, everybody. Christopher Luke, good to see you. Oh, the Tim the Asian Ink. Excellent to see you as well. Remember, like if you like. See you later.